here Sharon Coward, our Internet Administrator, who is ensuring that the streaming goes well. Neil Waters, our Director of Resources, Finance. Winfield Griffith, our Director of Research and IT. Gail Henry, who is our Sustainable Tourism Product Specialist, responsible for the Sustainable Tourism Conference. Adrian McAllister, who is one of our researchers here. Bonita Morgan, who is our Director of Human Resources, responsible for everything, including the Tourism HR Conference that will be held here in May. And we have some other colleagues at the back as well who are here to assist. Now I'd like to introduce to you Hugh Riley, who is the Secretary General of the CTO.
Thank you, Johnson. I'm going to add my thanks to Johnson's remarks by thanking all of you for being here, particularly those of you who've made a journey from other places. Those of you who are joining us live from locations outside of Barbados, welcome to this news conference. Annika Kentish, thank you very much for being here. The rumor is that you made the trip to Barbados especially for this, and I'm going with that rumor, so thank you for being here. And especially to the head of Research and Information Technology, who is on sick leave, Winfield Griffith. Thank you also, Winfield, for being here. And of course, all of my senior colleagues are here as well. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is a regular event for the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the State of the Industry News Conference, and not coincidentally, it is the title that we have chosen also for a major conference that we do each year, the State of the Tourism Industry. We believe that we have a responsibility to explain to our constituents throughout the Caribbean, the 40 million people that we have the honor to represent at the CTO, what the state of the business is that drives the economies of the Caribbean countries. And we need not only to tell you where we are today, how we got there, but where we are hoping that the business will go. A lot of detail will be given to you today, and my very pleasant task is very simply to get the proceedings started formally. I shall do so first by introducing Mr. Sean Smith, who's on my far left, the statistical specialist, who you'll hear more from. And now to introduce to you the Minister of Tourism for Barbados, the Honorable Richard Seeley. Many of you know that Barbados has played and continues to play a strong leadership role in regional tourism. Minister Seeley and his government has played an extremely important role in the Caribbean Tourism Organization. The CTO has a great deal to be grateful for the involvement and the role of the government and people of Barbados. And Minister Seeley himself, in fact, has given his services to the organization in a significant way. He is here representing the organization. The Honorable Ricky Skerritt, who is the chairman of the Council of Ministers, would normally be chairing this and can't be here today for a number of very important reasons, and has asked Minister Seeley, and Minister Seeley has agreed that in his capacity as the Deputy Chairman of the Council of Ministers of the CTO, Minister Seeley has agreed to come and preside over this morning's press conference. So I thank you all, and I thank Minister Seeley for giving us his time. Thank you, sir. And without further ado, I shall turn it over to the Minister of Tourism for Barbados and the Deputy Chairman of the Council of Ministers of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the Honorable Richard Seeley.
Thank you, Secretary General Riley, and good morning to everyone. Special welcome, of course, to the media. I'll join with the Secretary General in welcoming everyone, and particularly Ms. Kentish, who's journeyed from Antigua to be here with us. That is a significant note. And of course, let me again compliments of Ms. Coward's hard work. We also have media from near and far, other parts of the region, as well as internationally, who are tuned in. I want to welcome all of those participants as well. I also think I should appropriately acknowledge Winfield Griffith as well, who interrupted his convalescence from major surgery to come and be here to support one of his charges, young Mr. Smith, as he delivers. So thank you, Winfield, for displaying that kind of commitment to the organization and to the region. I also, of course, need to apologize for Chairman Scarrett's absence. He would have wanted to have been here. He, of course, looks forward to these events, and he is unavoidably has some situations in St. Kitts that are occupying his attention at the moment, and therefore we will, of course, wish him well as he continues doing tremendous work on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and of course the region as well. As the Caribbean's Tourism Development Agency, the Caribbean Tourism Organization continues to play a very vital role in the region's development. The organization is charged with the undertaking of a wide range of programs on behalf of the people of the Caribbean. Many of the individuals that head up these programs, the line managers, are actually here with us this morning as well, so you'll have an opportunity to also hear some of the specifics, and I will just give you touch on an overview of some of these programs. The events and activities include human resource development, sustainable tourism development, of course research, crisis communications, public relations, information technology within the context of tourism development, and of course, last and by no means least, advocacy. The CTO is a complex organization. Of course, there are 30 member countries at varying stages of tourism development. Of course, 4 languages in the main, and a blend of cultures. But the organization, I think, has been successful over the years at bringing all of us together under one umbrella, one sea, one voice, one Caribbean. Very importantly, as the authority on Caribbean tourism statistics, every credible statistic on visitor arrivals to and spend in the Caribbean has the CTO stamp on it. It is our responsibility, therefore, to keep you abreast of how our region is performing. This is what we are here to do today. But before we do that, I think it's important that I just touch on some of the key CTO activities that will be occurring this year. Of course, very importantly, at the top of that list would be the annual Sustainable Tourism Conference. It's the 13th edition. Is going to be held in Guyana from the 15th to the 18th. You may recall that that I had the honor 2 years ago of being the host minister for that event. We had a very successful STC conference here in Barbados. It's a very important conference, as you can imagine, because it tackles issues that are at the foundation of our industry, issues of sustainability and product development, as well as how we engage in our communities and to ensure that they all benefit from tourism. This year's conference, the theme will be keeping the right balance, sustaining our resources, and it speaks directly to those important issues. I am very pleased to announce this morning that the keynote speaker for the STC conference this year in Guyana is none other than the former president of Guyana, Mr. Barrett Jagdeo. He is a Caribbean champion for the mitigation of climate change, and he has received international recognition, of course, for that. He was named the Champion of the Earth in 2010 and is well known in UN circles and has been recognized by Time magazine and CNN, among other international publications, for his work in alleviating the effects of climate change and, of course, promoting sustainable development and issues relating to the environment. So I think it is wonderful that we can have a keynote speaker like that, and even more wonderful that it is actually a son of the soil, someone from the Caribbean, and we didn't have to go go abroad to get an international, someone who's internationally recognized in the area of sustainable tourism. So it would be, of course, great to hear what Mr. Jacques Deo has to say. In keeping with the mandate to develop human resources, the CTO introduced a human resources conference a few years ago. The 6th edition of that human resource conference will be held right here in Barbados from the 23rd to the 25th of May. This year's conference has as its theme, Enhancing Caribbean Tourism Human Resources Through Partnerships and Innovation, and will bring together tourism human resource professionals from the public and private sector, tourism educators, trainers, and consultants to share strategies and best practices and provide more technical information on certain aspects of tourism and tourism development. Not surprising, of course, it has been held in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus and the Barbados Community College, the Hospitality Institute, the Pomerine Hotel. So we are happy in that respect. There are 2 other major events I would just mention here that you should put on your calendar, and in some cases you can register for them. We have forms here for the media to register for of course, the annual Caribbean Week in New York. It's a celebration of all the vacation attributes of the Caribbean. That will be held from the 3rd to the 9th of June this year. A press release on the program for Caribbean Week will follow. And of course, we will have our State of the Industry Conference. That will be held in St. Kitts from the 11th to the 13th of October. The CTO is still planning that program, and you will get more details shortly. That is only the 3rd edition of that conference. The first one was held here. You may recall when we had Willie Walsh, who at the time was the CEO of British Airways, and we had a very good conference, I thought. Last year, it moved over to Saint Martin, or Saint Martin. I think it was both the Dutch and the French side. So the conference was on one side and the actual accommodation was on the other side. So we had Saint Martin/Saint Martin hosted last year's conference, and this year, of course, it moves over to St. Kitts. So we again look forward to having a very high level of participation, and again, we are talking to senior executives involved in the tourism sector who will be attending that conference. Well, additionally, the CTO, of course, has been doing a fine job of advocacy on behalf of the Caribbean, representing Caribbean tourism interests all over. The lobbying effort, of course, recently has been focused on the air passenger duty over the UK, and the lobbying campaign by the CTO has worked well. We have, in fact, been part of the process of leading on this issue. The fact that the Chancellor of the Exchequer and his ministers and other ministers in the British government have mentioned the Caribbean's position on several occasions demonstrates the fact that the lobbying effort is working. It is true that there are some increases planned for April of the APD, 8% increase on what's presently being charged. But you may recall last year, April, the planned increases then were delayed pending a consultation exercise. And again, the Caribbean position, as put by the CTO through the All Caribbean Committee in the UK and so on, was specifically mentioned on the floor of the House of Commons. So we are reaching the decision makers. We regret that in spite of fully participating in the consultation exercise at the level of the Council of Ministers, because there were several visits by ministers from throughout the Caribbean, including the chairman, well, the current chairman, the former chairman, Former Minister of Jamaica, Minister Bartlett. We had former Minister of St. Lucia as well, Mr. Chastney, myself, and we did put the case. However, the British government has decided, while in the first instance they delayed the increases, they are putting the increases, the 8% increases in place from April. So the £75 APD on persons traveling economy will be moving to £81, and the £150 APD for persons traveling business and hire will move to £162. It simply means we have to continue our work in terms of lobbying this tax. They recognize it discriminates against the Caribbean. They recognize that it's negatively impacting us. But at the same time, they have gone ahead not only to keep it in place, but to put the increases on top of it. So we are not going to in any way stop putting our case. It is not that we have failed, far from that. They have recognized that we have gotten through, but they have indeed taken what they think is in their position. This is a matter on which the CTO again will continue to lead its efforts. You can also look forward to more of this sort of work as well. There is a suggestion that in the EU, aviation taxes that may be incarnated from the APD may start to appear in other parts of Europe. We are very concerned about that, and we are not waiting for it to happen. The CTO is also interacting with many of the EU institutions in Brussels, including the European Parliament, to make sure that we can continue to put our case as the advocacy aspect of the CTO's work is strengthened. One of the things that we discussed at the Council of Ministers meeting, Paradise Island, earlier this year, is the need for that. We have been heavily focused on the APD for good reasons, but we also need to start to concentrate some of the advocacy work at some of the issues that are also relevant to the US source market and, of course, the European situation as well. Let me just say finally that it can be of no surprise to anyone that tourism spend in the region is lagging. This is a direct reflection of global consumer behavior due to the economic circumstances that we continue to see in our major source markets. In the face of that reality, we still welcome 23.8 million visitors to our shores in 2011. That was an appreciable increase over 2010. And we also anticipate further increases in 2012. That tells us that the Caribbean brand is still very strong and very desirable. And I think a lot of that has to do with the work that the Caribbean Tourism Organization has been doing. And so once again, I salute the work of the Secretary General and his entire team. And in doing so, it is, of course, my pleasure to hand over to the statistical specialist at the CTO, Mr. Sean Smith, who will give you more particulars insofar as the state of the Caribbean's tourism industry. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Minister Seeley. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Caribbean tourism industry is holding its own, remaining afloat and resilient amidst turbulence in the marketplace. Tourism arrivals to the Caribbean region remained buoyant in 2011, continuing the recovery process which began in 2010. Still, there were signs that we're not yet out of the woods. The figures reveal uneven growth among the destinations, and revenue continued to lag arrivals. Overall, the Caribbean welcomed an estimated 23.8 million tourists in 2011, a 3.3% rise over 2010, when just over 23 million stayover visitors came to our shores. With the exception of May and October, which were down marginally, the region recorded a rise on arrivals every month in 2011 over a corresponding month of the previous year. Tourist arrivals during the winter months, and we approximate that by January to April arrivals, were up 4% over the previous winter, which had also grown up 3.9% over the 2009 period. The summer period ending December recorded a lower than expected increase of 3%. Among the factors contributing to this performance were lower consumer and business confidence and a weak US dollar. The larger destinations, including Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, continue the historical trend of leading growth in the region. This subgroup, which accounts for more than half of all arrivals to the region on an annual basis, grew by 4.2%. Tourism in the Dutch Caribbean performed slightly better, recording a 4.9% rise with robust performances in Curacao and Aruba of 30.9% and 5.6% respectively. Reflecting poor performances from the European market, the Caribbean Community CARICOM had a much slower rate of recovery, with arrivals up by just 1.2%. This was a result of modest growth of 1.8% in the OECS countries, coupled with a 1% increase in arrivals to the other CARICOM countries. The larger grouping of Commonwealth countries made up of CARICOM plus Bermuda, the British Virgin Islands, and the Cayman Islands recorded a 2.2% rise, when Martinique, the lone French Caribbean destination reporting during the period, saw arrivals going up by 3.9%. When we look at the markets, we can say that the Caribbean recorded modest performances from all major source markets in 2011. Silver arrivals from the United States were up 1.7% compared to the previous year. Anguilla, Barbados, Belize, and Curacao were among the destinations with increased visits from the U.S. Contrary to the norm, there were fewer U.S. residents arriving in some destinations that traditionally benefit the most from this market. On the other hand, Canada continued to outpace all other markets, with arrivals from there up 6.8% over 2010. This represented a continuation of the sustained growth experienced in the market over the last 5 years. The arrival pattern has not changed much, with Cancun, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic receiving the majority of Canadian tourists. However, 13 other CTO member countries also recorded increases in arrivals from Canada. Of the 23 destinations with market details, 14 reported increases in arrivals from Europe, with Barbados 6%, Cancun 3.9%, Curacao 2.9%, and Cuba 1.1% being the better performers, receiving hundreds of thousands of Europeans. Several other destinations recorded growth in arrivals from Europe on much smaller numbers. Still, compared to 2010, the overall figures from Europe remain flat, with the Caribbean recording a 0.6% increase. The United Kingdom continues to be one of the most important markets in Europe for the CARICOM countries. When we take into consideration only countries that have reported, the CARICOM countries receive over 58% of all arrivals from the UK in 2011. This figure is likely to change, however, when we receive data from the remaining member states. With the 23 countries reporting, we experienced a decline in arrivals from the UK for the third straight year, mainly due to a weak economy and increases in the air passenger duty. Tourist arrivals from this market to the CARICOM region increased modestly by 1.7%, thanks to increases of 4% or greater to Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Montserrat, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It should be noted, however, that arrival levels were still below those of 2007. There were encouraging developments in intra-regional traffic, which grew by 3.5% when compared to 2010. But there were concerns for those OECS countries for which the Caribbean remains the most important market. This subgroup recorded a 9.8% drop in arrivals from the Caribbean. The larger countries in the Commonwealth country group experienced a 10.3% rise, led by Barbados, Guyana, and Jamaica, which reported robust increases of 15%. The hotel sector performed marginally better than last year, than it did in 2010. According to Smith Travel Research, average room occupancy was 61.8%, compared to 60% in 2010, while the average room rate reached US $167.56 compared to US $163.36 in 2010. These results indicate some measure of recovery within the subsector. This notwithstanding, indications are that the pattern of visitor spending is changing significantly throughout the region. Nervous cost-conscious tourists are using the most economical sources of goods and services available in the destination. This switching from higher cost to lower cost suppliers have resulted in the reduction of average spending, which has contributed to the stagnant or ebbing foreign exchange reserve streams. We're going to take a look now at the cruise performance for the region. In 2011, there was continued growth of the cruise industry internationally. With the grouping of cruise lines serving the region, the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association reported that 14 new ships were inaugurated for international ports of call, with convenient departures from nearby catchment cities. Current cruise ship orders extend through 2014, include 26 new builds of 19 ocean-going vessels and 7 European cruise river boats, with 51,000 berths at a value of nearly $12 billion US. Huge investment in cruise ships reflect the commitment and optimism of that industry stakeholders. But destinations in the Southern Caribbean were severely affected by the redeployment of several cruise vessels, particularly during the summer months. Much of this rescheduling saw the relocated ships playing routes outside the Caribbean. Consequently, the cruise sector showed no appreciable change in 2011, with cruise passenger arrivals increasing marginally by only 0.3% to reach 20.6 million. This inconsequential change in Caribbean cruise arrivals was in contrast to the 6.6% increase worldwide predicted by the cruise industry for the international arrivals in 2011. The outlook for 2012. Economies in both North America and Europe are still under considerable stress. Higher than usual unemployment continues to prevail in the main markets, where monetary and fiscal systems remain under intense pressure. The U.S. is into an election year, and while some may anticipate this as a reason for U.S. travelers to stay home, there is no hard evidence to substantiate this. The Olympics Games in England this year could also be a significant distraction from north-south travel. It is expected that the continued addition to cruise stock internationally will have a positive effect on Caribbean schedules, if only residually. However, high oil prices and the tendency to home port close to densely populated catchment areas in places like the Mediterranean and other large European countries, especially in summer, will be some of the factors contributing to the dampening of Caribbean cruise business overall in 2012. In light of these realities, arrivals to the Caribbean are expected not to exceed a 3% increase in 2012, and visitor expenditure is not expected to grow meaningfully during the year. Based on the preliminary schedules, cruise arrivals to the Caribbean are not likely to rise by more than 2 to 3%. Thank you.
Now we'll open the floor for questions. Please identify yourself and your media, and you can ask your questions.
May I just also say that there's a lot of very solid information there. Don't be afraid that if you've missed it, it's lost to you forever, because that data is available to you, and you've got your copies already. Excellent.
Morning, Minister Seeley, Ian Bourne, VisionReporter.com. I was taking a look at some social media this morning. There's a proposal for heritage tax. Am I understanding correctly, for Barbados? Because the reason I'm asking is perhaps this is just an idea on my side. The same way that while Britain is ignoring the statistics about APD, perhaps as a reverse form of discrimination, that UK visitors that come to Barbados, if there is a heritage tax, that it is waived for UK visitors. It remains in effect for other nationalities. And the other part, that's a comment. The question in relation to it is, while Britain appears to be, full steam ahead with APD, what is Barbados and the Caribbean doing to combat a tax too far?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, first of all, well, as you know, Barbados gets more UK business than any other CTO member, and it's valuable to the region, but it's critical to Barbados. And for that reason, I have suggested to my colleagues that we need to continue the fight. We need to basically dig in and prepare for a protracted battle with the British government. It's not going to go away, and we just have to continue to put the case. I mean, the case is a strong case, and the government has acknowledged it. That is the British government, and therefore I think we need to continue to do that. Having said that, I don't think that we should simply not do some other things to mitigate the tax. I mean, which I think is what you're suggesting. I mean, the majority of our British visitors come here on a budget. I mean, we do get the rich and the famous for whom money is no object, but they are very much the minority. Of course, the media makes a lot of noise about them, so people feel that all of our British visitors are like that, but it's not true. The majority of them that support the indigenously owned small hotel properties in the South Coast, for example, in St. Lawrence Gap, they're coming here on a budget, and if they have to spend a larger portion of their budget on an aviation tax, that means there's less spend on the ground. But having said that, we can still do some things to try to enhance opportunities where visitors can have more opportunities to spend on the ground, and that is where your reference to heritage tourism, without actually spelling it out, community tourism can come in. And we in Barbados are doing a number of initiatives, both through the ministry. We are trying to embrace the whole UNESCO inscription and to take that out to other areas as well, and not only Bridgetown and the Garrison, but of course Spikestown with the Arlington House Museum and other aspects of Spikestown that are looked at as well. The Charleston Connection, and of course the Freedom Footprints, the slave route projects that tour that we unveiled. And we have to continue to look at other things we can do in terms of community tourism. Now, at the regional level, the CTO is also doing a lot of good work in terms of heritage tourism as well. And as you can see, you heard earlier in my statements, it's featuring prominently in terms of the conferences and so that they're doing. I heard Mr. Altman's suggestion, as you did, on the heritage tax. I would want to recommend that we tread lightly on that one. Obviously, it is the Ministry of Finance taxation is their remit, and they will look at it in the context of all of the other taxes that we have to deal with. And I'm not sure that on the basis of a call from a prominent citizen, that I can just take a position, in favor or against it. But I guess in the context of what we are faced with, as the fiscal challenges and so on, it can be considered, but it has to be looked at carefully, of course. We don't want to kill the goose that's laying the golden egg. It's a goose, right, Hugh? The goose, right? They kill the goose. I wasn't sure if it was a chicken or a duck. It's a goose that lays the golden egg.
It changes its form from time to time.
Right. Generally, it's a goose. So that is how I see it.
For my colleagues in here, please bear with us. We'll move from you to people who are online. We also have some media online, and there are a couple of questions.
There's a question from Gwendel Mercelina in Curacao. He's asking, what will the CTO do in 2012 to create a better synergy in the Caribbean through the islands?
I will allow the Secretary General. We haven't heard his voice yet, so you want to swing down the mics? Okay. Hugh, I can put you to work.
Thank
He
you.
goes on to add, what I miss in the Caribbean is the synergy and possibility to connect easier. It's so difficult to travel through the Caribbean itself, and we will have to create together better opportunities that aren't so expensive.
Well, I'm glad that he expanded on the question, because I was pondering on what exactly he would have meant when he talked about synergy, because CTO certainly does a lot of things to increase the synergy. The minister mentioned earlier the conferences that we're having, and I think it's important to note that we are not now just having one massive conference, but we've broken the conferences up into specialized areas so that people throughout the region who have an interest in HR and improving the business of training and education and certification, they come to their own conference. People who have an interest in marketing come to their own conference. People who look at sustainability come to their own conference, and so on. And that, let me tell you, in terms of sharing best practices and offering solutions to countries that might be grappling with a question, hearing what the solutions are that one of their neighbors might have achieved already, that's important synergy. And just the networking opportunity that CTO provides for its constituents, private sector and public sector, is a really very important part of it. Now, that synergy certainly also extends towards solving problems that have to do with air transportation. There are occasions when we can say, perhaps a little immodestly, but I'll say it anyway, that we have been able to put airline competitive forces together in a CTO space in circumstances where they would not normally be even communicating. So our job has been to bring the parties together and hopefully find solutions. Air transportation, particularly, though not exclusively, within the Caribbean, has occupied our attention to a large extent. Last week, we attended and actively participated in finding solutions to exactly the questioner's issue of interregional travel when we participated in an OECS Council of Tourism and Aviation Ministers meeting. A number of issues came up there, including the business of the San Juan Accord, and we are actively involved in implementing aspects of that accord. So there is a great deal of work yet to be done in bringing I'll use the questioner's word, synergy that we need to the Caribbean, but it's not a one-time fix. These are solutions that are ongoing, as the challenges will be ongoing, and we're very happy and proud that CTO is able to not pretend that we have the answers to everything, but certainly to find where those answers are and bring the parties together so that coming out of a convocation that CTO creates, we can find solutions to the matters that trouble our industry.
I have a second question from Melanie, Caribbean editor of Canadian Travel, Jack's Facts Travel Trade. This is directed at Mr. Riley. As the economy in North America slowly recovers, are the booking windows for the Caribbean expanding? Or will the pattern of late booking and all kinds of last-minute deals and add-ons become the new normal for tourists booking the region for a vacation?
I'm afraid Melanie's answered her own question, and that is yes, the booking window has continued to be really very tight. This is the mood that consumers are in now, and that's the reason why the Caribbean has been forced to be as, shall we say, competitive in our pricing as possible. Consumers are expecting a deal. And this is the fact of life now in this economic downturn. All consumers are expecting a deal. The minister pointed out earlier that there is a percentage, albeit a small percentage, of Caribbean visitors who really are at the top end of the economic ladder. But they too are looking for a deal. It's become a badge of honor to say to your friend and to your neighbor, I paid less than you did for my vacation. And that unfortunately doesn't always redound to the benefit of the Caribbean. So consumers are constantly looking for a deal, and no matter what they see online today, they're expecting that at midnight tonight or in the wee hours of tomorrow morning, it might be reduced. And as long as they keep this vigilance and this incessant hunt for a better deal, the booking window is going to get shorter and shorter and shorter because they're looking for that deal right up to the last minute before they finally commit to booking the vacation. So yes, this is the environment in which consumers are constantly shortening the lead time, and it does provide a challenge for our accommodation sector as well as the air transportation sector in the tourism business.
Anika Kentish, Observer Media Group. A couple of questions. I wanted to hone in on a concern that was raised just a little while ago concerning the on-the-ground spending, and I was wondering if you're able to quantify what kind of drop we can expect for on-the-ground spending. And I also want to ask of Mr. Riley or the Minister specifically about interregional travel. Is there any indication as to what is the reason for the drop in Caribbean arrivals, particularly in the OECS, and especially in light of the fact that I know that the CTO, Council of Ministers, made this a priority item coming out of the last State of the Industry conference?
Number of questions there. I'm going to start with Sean, or perhaps Winfield Griffith can zero in on this one as well. But the first question from Ms. Kentish really had to do with the spend and what kinds of declines we're seeing and projecting in the future. Yeah, you were asking us to crystal ball a little bit for a part of that question, but I'm sure that the crystal ballers among our statisticians have an answer for that one. Winfield Griffith, who's the head of Research and Information Technology, is going to answer that. Hugh Foster's delegated.
With respect to the first part of the question, and I'd prefer to refer to it as the informal economy rather than the underground. I think the connotations of underground. Underground. Oh, sorry. Apologies. I thought I heard underground. Anyway, just the same. To explain it in terms of the underground economy. The Secretary General said earlier, and rightly so, that the consumer spending has shifted to areas which were not traditionally as heavily patronized. You're finding more and more visitors now spending in areas that locals would traditionally more heavily patronize. And they're doing this, of course, to access the sources of supplies which they find more economical. So those patterns are changing. Now, it has advantages, of course, and disadvantages. I mean, there's a trade-off. Some will see less and some will see more, right? And I think the informal sector is seeing relatively more than they would have in the past, right? Whereas the more formal sector, larger establishments and so on are seeing relatively less. The work still has to be done as to what the overall impact on the economy will be of this. It is very worthy of further study, and I know we are putting some, CTO is engaged in some projects which we are hoping will throw out more economic information throughout the region, that somewhere along the line we will be in a much better position to quantify these changes. Right? But that is one area that we are looking at closely, we are monitoring closely. So when we say average spending of visitors is lower than it was before, it is based on the information we have received from a limited number of our members, and while we are inclined to extrapolate that for the region as a whole, we still are cautious and desirous of seeing the results of work in before we make a definitive statement on that.
If I may interject, I will have a follow-up. Maybe this might be a better way to ask a question. Is it, based on what you're looking at, is it a situation where, given the state of the overall economy, there is a concern, or is it a concern to the point where you think it is necessary to take some sort of immediate action to see what you can do to mitigate? Or is it just, so are you just something that you're monitoring, or do you think it's something that needs immediate action?
Well, there's clearly need for immediate action from the policy, from the perspective of our service providers. Clearly, in order to generate more business, those providing the goods and services will need to look at ways and means of stimulating further spending, and there are those among us who I believe are doing quite well in this regard, and the stimulation in spending need not necessarily come from higher prices. It could come from using different media for advertising the products, and saying that, I'm thinking particularly of some of the suppliers of products who are depending heavily now on the social media, for instance. Just last week I happened to pass by one well-known tourism establishment in Barbados, and I was shown a large stack of responses from TripAdvisor, a printout from visitors, and this particular proprietor said that he gets a weekly printout of what TripAdvisor is saying about his product, and more individuals are coming to Barbados with the expectation that his particular product will be on the agenda, and so on. So there are creative ways that will have to be devised, even beyond the policy, but at the micro level, to ensure that this whole lowering in visitor spending is counted.
You had a second part of your question.
Y-
and I
you know,
don't know
to
whether
do with-
regional? Yes.
Intro- Well, let me say, the numbers have shown that Barbados, Guyana, and Jamaica has done very well in terms of re-stimulation of regional travel. The OECS countries have shown a decline. Barbados and Guyana have actually seen increased airlift intra-regionally. And I guess we are all aware of the fact that the introduction in the early part of last year of Red Jet to these destinations would have made a significant difference, particularly to a relatively small destination as far as tourism goes, like Guyana. But even in the case of Barbados, it clearly made a significant difference. The numbers are not in for Trinidad and Jamaica thus far. Of course, they join much later. Right? So that is a common thread that we have seen there in terms of increased airlift to those countries. Needless to say, I mean, as airlift continues to be expanded throughout the region, we can hopefully expect that the bargaining process will result in a further stimulation of air travel to the benefit of those who are not necessarily now engaged.
I'm going to follow on. Since Ms. Kentish mentioned the Council of Ministers, let me just follow on from what Winfield just touched on. And he is a professional statistician. That is not a political statement. He has the robust statistical facts are that basically where Red Jet has been introduced, to put it bluntly, has seen an increase in regional business. Where Red Jet is not operating, they are seeing decreases. And that is the reality. In the case of Barbados, I could give you specific numbers. 9.5% increase from CARICOM, other CARICOM. 35.3% from Trinidad increase in arrivals 2011 over 2010. And again, it is a direct result of the new player. And it is for that reason that the Barbados government is supporting Red Jet through the Barbados Tourism Authority. We've already taken that decision, and we are just working out how we're going to do it. We support WestJet, we support JetBlue, we support all kinds of airlines. And this is a Barbadian company, so we will support them. And the region will benefit. I think it is worth noting, Ms. Kentish, at the level of the Council of Ministers, every single member of the Council of Ministers is supporting the case for Red Jet. Those that are those that have money invested in LIAC and those that don't. Antigua and St. Vincent are excited. In fact, Antigua has already approved Red Jet to fly into Veerbird International Airport. So the issue, therefore, is what we can do to facilitate this effort. And let me just say that it's not that I have any, well, I'm going to get to that too, because that's important. I have no vested interest in Red Jet. It's about having options. We want to see Caribbean Airlines get their act together and start to do what they have to do. And I'm very happy to hear that, for example, St. Lucia is going to have some increased services from Trinidad. That will certainly help their regional numbers as well. The Trinidadians, of course, we know, depending on the price of oil, it depends, how much money they have to spend, or should I say natural gas. But that's a good thing to see Cal coming back on stream in a big way, and of course, last and not least, Liat. We want to see Liat get its act together, and I think that based on what I gather occurred at the last shareholders meeting at the Hilton Hotel here, it looks as though they've agreed to a way forward. The unions and so on are in discussion now with the shareholders, and we hope that we can get a more sustainable model for Liat's continued success. And I think that the important point to make there is for the consumer to have options. It is not inconsistent to be supporting RedJet and supporting Liat and supporting Cal, because we want all of them to do well. The more options the Caribbean people have, the more they will travel. It's as simple as that. The ferry is also something, the inter-island ferry, the fast ferry that we support fully. And again, I always make the point, it is not a substitute for airlift. It is an additional option again for consumers as well. I think the opportunity for large groups, for example, sports teams and church groups and so on and so forth, and community groups, the ferry will provide that option. And of course, the produce and the like can also move a lot quicker. I think in terms of CSME and trying to the single market and moving goods and so on throughout the region, I think it would be a very, very good thing. So the bottom line is, with respect to travel within the region, that at the level of the Council of Ministers, we want to see as many options as possible so that we can in turn see the fares come down. You have the statistical evidence before you. It is no longer what the Minister of Tourism from Barbados feels or anything. The news is in. The statistics are here. We need to have the options in order that we can have more travel within the region. And you must also keep in mind there are some destinations that rely heavily on travel from other parts of the region. I mean, just name St. Kitts and the Grenadines, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for example, a lot of business rely heavily on business from within the region. And therefore, we can't understate as an organization the importance to get the aviation picture together.
Gerson Coordination News, can you give us
point of view, the business of prospecting for business in new source markets is a very important focus of attention. I think you probably know, or you may not know, that the Caribbean Tourism Organization, for instance, prospects for business on behalf of our member countries at major events in South America. We've just fairly recently left a major show called ABAV in the last quarter of last year, which is a significant marketplace, if you will, for attracting business out of South America into the Caribbean. We participate in the Roots Aviation events, which again are convocations of airlines looking to fly into new destinations, and new destinations looking to attract the attention of airlines. We do that on behalf of our member countries. We spend a fair amount of time looking at markets in Asia, and now in the more recent past we've been looking at some East European markets as well. Now, I don't want to suggest, though, that this is happening at the expense of traditional markets. I think, to your point, we're looking to help our member countries to fish where the fish are. So if the fish are already in traditional markets and one just needs to look for more fish there, as has been the case in Canada, which is proving to be a thriving market, you probably also know that the CTO has facilitated a number of meetings between Canadian operators and Canadian carriers and our member countries. So we're doing two things. We're looking for more business within existing markets, because after all, the cost of acquisition is a very important factor in determining profitability in the tourism business. So We have to pay attention to that. And the cost of acquiring a visitor from an entirely new market is a factor in that equation. So one has to keep balance here. So yes, we're looking for business and helping our member countries find business in non-traditional areas, Asia, throughout Europe, and certainly in South America, and to the point that the minister made earlier, in the Caribbean as well. But you see, Caribbean tourists are not unlike tourists from other parts of the world. Caribbean tourists are going to travel in larger numbers if 2 or 3 things happen. If there is convenience, if the price is reasonable, and if the economy allows them to continue to travel, because I mean, the economic downturn certainly affects Caribbean tourists as well. So the answer is yes, we try to do whatever is expected of us to facilitate the growth of tourism business to the Caribbean, and we are happy to say that we are seeing some results. I mean, let's face it, we've pointed out here in some detail that the spend is still lagging behind arrivals. But the first order of business is to get people to come, and they're coming in very large numbers, and for that, all of us in the Caribbean have to be thankful.
Okay, just to wrap up as a spin-off to that, the whole aspect of event-oriented tourism, I know our minister has been pushing that, but are you seeing in the region, perhaps in the area of interregional travel, that persons are moving between islands, perhaps for various events, and how we can develop that?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, you're hitting on something that I think is very near and dear to all of our member countries throughout the region. I mean, there is a proliferation of sporting events, festivals of one kind or another. You know, talk to the Trinidadians about what Carnival does, or talk to any of our member countries that happens to have a carnival or some iteration of carnival. Talk to Minister Seeley and my colleagues here about what Cropover does in terms of being a magnet to draw media attention, to draw excitement to the destination, to draw people from across the world to come to Barbados during that particular period. I mean, so the whole point is that culture and heritage and sports and event tourism really continue to be magnets to draw people into the Caribbean. And the more exciting we can help to make the Caribbean, the more people will write about us and talk about us and want to come and visit us. The other important aspect, I think, is the unasked part of that question, and that is that you place the festivals at a time that are strategically important to you. And Barbados has been doing that extremely well in details that I'm sure Minister Seeley is much more able to articulate than I can. But if you look at where Barbados places its festivals, and some of our member countries are doing the same thing, you will see that they are there to fill particular gaps, to provide business at the time when the accommodation sector and the distribution channels need that business in the shoulder periods.
The outlook for 2012 shows a number of distractions, Olympic Games, elections, and what have you. Any new projects by the CTO to counter that with the stimulus visitors to the region during that period?
That's a very big question, and I'm not sure that we have the time to answer it properly. But I'll tell you that the CTO is helping to focus on 4 essentials. First of all, safety is an issue. The Caribbean has to do whatever we possibly can to protect the safety of our citizens and our visitors. Competitiveness is an issue. Not just price competitiveness, but product competitiveness. The third issue, and not necessarily in order of importance, is desirability. We have to continue to make our quality of experience so desirable that not only do we lure new visitors to our destinations, but we also lure visitors back, and most importantly, that our destinations are so desirable that we encourage people who have visited to influence other people to come to the Caribbean. if you're going to put your relationship with your neighbor or your friend on the line to say, come spend your money where I have spent mine, then the Caribbean is really doing a fine job in making that happen. And then, of course, the last issue, which perhaps you might argue is number one, is profitability. So we have to do whatever we can. Look, this is a business that we're in. We talk about the tourism industry, the tourism business. If we are not profitable, we're not going to be sustainable. So to answer your question, those four essentials require an enormous amount of work, a great deal of collaboration between all of our member countries. Some of our member countries are doing an excellent job of tackling all of those and more. CTO's job is to help to make that possible, to provide the environment, to provide the services and the information that is necessary to deliver those four essentials.
Thank you very much all. Thanks for coming. And as I
Thank
said,
you.
the Minister, Secretary General, and the rest of our staff are here, so feel free to continue to program what they have.
Thing just clicked off.
It just clicked off immediately when Johnson said that. Yeah. Maybe it's time to shut us down at a particular.